Didn't want to work with me. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Youth Sunday.
Amen. Yeah.
We get another round of applause for all the kids. And I want to give a special round of applause, particularly to Nathaniel.
That's right.
Because he's kind of our unseen hand. Even off of Youth Sundays, he's still up there, he's still in the booth. And if he does his job right, he's already going to know. Something along the same lines as kind of keeping a hidden hand in things. Today's message, I'm going to be speaking on something a tad off topic. I'm going to be speaking a little bit on sleight of hand. Sleight of hand is a more modern term for what used to be called magic tricks. Some people still go with that. Most people have now adopted the name of sleight of hand. There's less negative connotations with it. And what sleight of hand likes to do is it likes to put this image in front of you, this very obvious and transparent image, while all the work is being done behind the scenes. And if they do it correctly, if sleight of hand is done properly, you never see them actually do the trick. You never see them move the card. You never see them disappear. It all happens right in front of you and seemingly was that simple. And similarly to Nathaniel's job, it shouldn't be caught. You shouldn't notice that it's happening. So to take a little look into sleight of hand, I grabbed a few of the definitions off. And the first definition for sleight of hand, being as now is adopted more modernly for a skill, it's a manual dexterity, typically in performing tricks. A lot of times sleight of hands goes hand in hand with cardistry, which is a form of sleight of hand where they take a deck of cards and they spin them around their fingers. They make this kind of like art and like dancing around their hands, and it's kind of mesmerizing. And the second definition, one that was previously the more common definition, is skillful deception. As that being sleight of hand, whether con artists use, whether somebody gimmicks you right before you without even noticing it. Sleight of hand in that sense is very much an evil thing. It's meant to go under the radar and typically steal. So in sleight of hand, there's always two different hands at work. You have the first, which is meant to misdirect. A lot of card tricks, you'll see people do hand gestures or make noises, sounds. And one I'm going to show you today, they like to use the hand and make it draw attention so that what they're doing with the other, they can get the work done without anybody noticing. And I'm actually going to, so that it's better to understand, I'm going to throw a video up real quick of just a short 40-second clip of somebody doing a very simple and basic sleight of hand trick.
A bit of a demonstration on a card gambling technique known as estimation.
Scroll back to 142.
Alright, I'm going to show you a bit of a demonstration on a card gambling technique known as estimation. Now, if you can estimate where the cards may be in the deck, you might be able to shuffle them in your favor. So, for instance, I'm going to grab two random cards here. We have the 6 and the 9, so the black 6 and the black 9. I'm going to take those two and leave them at random spots in the deck. Probably, I'm going to say 21 and 36. That's about 21 and 36, I believe. So if that's 21 and 36, and that's how you find the 6 and the 9.
So what he did there was a little bit of a bit. He goes on to explain the trick and say how it's done. But the entire time he's talking, everything he's saying literally has no meaning. It's a part of the sleight of hand. And he explains such later on in the video, but the name of the trick is called the 6 and 9 trick. It's a little bit of a mental game, something that fools your brain. He pulls out a black 6 and a black 9. He doesn't specifically tell you whether it's spade or clubs, and he's already got the other black 6 and the other black 9 on the top and bottom of the deck. So when he puts those 2 cards back in the deck and he throws the deck across, he holds the top and bottom card, and it looks simply like he just did a magic trick. He just pulled 2 cards out of the deck, completely estimated it, great guesswork, and the entire time he's talking is just meant to add to the illusion. And then this sleight of hand it's very common, obviously, in magic tricks, but also in the real world as well. Some would call it a silver tongue. It's very smooth, very quick. You don't even realize that what he's doing is meant to deceive you. And this being one of the simpler ones, there are other ones that require a lot more mechanical skill, such as the snap change, which they present a card in front of you and quickly flick the front card off. It's 2 cards layered together and they flick it without you realizing it. The other card disappears and it looks like they just changed the card right in front of you. And it goes on, and there are much more mechanical skills to it. But that's the basics of sleight of hand. It's meant to put you off your guard. It's meant to make you look somewhere else for the answer when, if you think about it a little bit more, you might be able to find it. For instance, with the misdirect, if you noticed, before he actually did the trick, he snapped with his left hand to draw your attention to his left hand, so when he threw the deck of cards, you never noticed he held on to 2. And I'm going to throw one more video up. This one's a little bit more from acclaimed magicians, Penn and Teller, from Fool Us, their TV show. And they go through 7 basics of sleight of hand. And they go through and teach you and show you in a very, very well done manner.
This is not intended to glorify smoking. That said, looks simple, doesn't it? But when you're dealing with a master of sleight of hand, like my partner Teller, even the simplest activity may be a complex deception. Let's watch that routine again. Is he really crushing out a cigarette? Is he really adjusting his hat? Is he really pulling out a fresh cigarette? Is he really bothered by that itch in his left eye? Is he really just lighting a cigarette? To understand the complexity of Teller's life, you need to know the 7 basic principles of magic. 1, hold. To hold an object in an apparently empty hand. 2, ditch. To secretly dispose of an unneeded object. 3, steal. The opposite of ditch. To secretly obtain a needed object. 4, load. To secretly move the needed object to where it's needed. 5, simulation. To give the impression that something that hasn't happened has. 6, misdirection, to lead attention away from a secret move. And 7, switch, to secretly exchange one object for another. Teller needs nothing but a pencil, 1 lit cigarette, and a flashlight. Let's watch that original routine again, but this time from the other side. He palms a cigarette. He simulates crushing it out. He steals the palm lit cigarette and ditches the lit cigarette in his ear. He exhales smoke to misdirect the smoke coming out from around his hat. He steals the pencil. He simulates taking the pencil, which is simulating a cigarette, from the non-existent cigarette pack, and puts a simulated cigarette in his mouth. He rubs his eye to misdirect as he loads the burning cigarette from his ear. He simulates a lighter with a flashlight and switches the lit cigarette for the unlit pencil under cover of misdirection from the flashlight. Palm simulation, steal, ditch, misdirection, steal, simulation, misdirection, load, simulation, switch, misdirection. Looks simple, doesn't it?
That particular example was tellers. If you don't know much about Penn and Teller, they've been doing magic since before I was born and are considered one of the greatest magicians in the world. But that entire gimmick was all sleight of hand. It was all mechanical skill, all very practiced, poised, hours and hours and hours of mechanical and muscle memory to get to the point where he can simply just pretend to light a cigarette. His whole sleight of hand bit was probably anywhere from about 30 seconds to a minute of him doing that whole setup, and all it was him trying to deceive you to think he was lighting another cigarette, when in case it was always the same one. And that's the main goal of sleight of hand. Sleight of hand is meant to be seen as transparent. It's trying to give you this false identity that what you're looking at is exactly what you think you're looking at, even though the work behind it, that second hand, has so much more to do. So in that video, they pull out what they call the 7 basics of sleight of hand, the 7 basics of magic, which were palm, ditch, steal, load, simulation, misdirection, and switch. I'd like to take one in particular out and apply it to our own lives. That one being simulation. Without really realizing it, that one particular trick we do in our day-to-day lives on a pretty popular basis. I'd say for the most part it's probably every day. And the way we typically do that is sometimes unknowing to us, and the majority of the time it's meant to be unknowing to the rest of the populace. We use simulation in a way to hide what's wrong. We try to put on an act and take that step by step and go through our normal daily routines and show off this false sense, this security, this, oh, everything's normal, everything's fine, it's all going according to plan. When in fact, that first hand is just a misdirect. We're putting on that brave face, we're going to work every day, we're doing the same thing we do week in and week out, when behind it, that's not the case. When behind it, everything seems to be falling apart, and when behind it, it's everything but normal. And so that particular piece, that basic of sleight of hand, simulation, is something that the majority of us are actually experts at, whether or not we're keeping up face with friends and family that we may not all be that close with, or whether or not we're going to work and pretending to love our job when we really wish we could get a better one. Or maybe it's coming to church because you're supposed to come to church every Sunday and you feel like you're supposed to be there, and then yet you're not attending. You're just counting that check mark for your attendance. You're not actually here, you're just showing up. And we use that simulation everywhere. At church, home, school, work, wherever it may be, we like to put on that muse, that face that nothing's wrong. That simulation does nothing but more than hurt us. It not only does it make it so you feel like everything's okay, you want to keep doing what you're doing because it's the routine, you're used to it. Everybody gets in that set routine. They wake up at a certain time, go to work, come home, go to sleep. And there's a set routine, everybody does it. You typically don't break from a routine. And even if it's unhealthy to continue the routine, we'll continue the routine. Because that's what we know. It's comfortable, it's safe. And we don't want to put on any other face to anyone that says otherwise. We don't want to act like we aren't in control. We don't want to have anybody see us and look at us and being like, man, they're a hot mess. And so we continue to simulate. We continue to put that one hand in this direction up, while in fact in the back we're juggling so many things that if one of them were to slip, everything comes tumbling down. Not only does it hurt us on an internal level where we are confused and surprised and unsure of our standing, but it doesn't let anybody in. We have a whole church body here that I guarantee you, if any of us needed help, someone would step up and want to help. But if we don't know someone needs help, no one's gonna offer to step up. If you're stuck on the side of the road and you don't turn your flashers on, do you think someone's gonna pull over? So when we simulate that, not only are we putting ourselves in the dark and putting a false sense of security over ourselves, we're not allowing anybody to step in and help that could potentially help. We're continuing to let ourselves slowly slip down that slope to who knows where. Over the course of the last 5 months, that's kind of what's been happening to me. I've been running through the motions because I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to shirk my responsibility. I've been jumping through hoops to make sure that I could continue to do what I'm doing, even though I felt like I was spreading myself too thin. And so, I've been continuing to do Appleseed as much as I could have until recently. I was coming on Wednesday nights and Sunday nights and still working 52-hour weeks. And so it was beginning to get hard. I was putting on that false simulation that everything was okay, I'm doing all right, nothing's wrong, and it eventually comes back to bite you.
Amen.
In my particular position, I felt that some of my lessons may have been falling through, that I wasn't putting the effort that required, that I wasn't giving the kids what they needed. And one of the biggest things to me when I became youth pastor that I heard from others and that I heard from other kids is that when you can tell the pastor's not the youth pastor, whoever the teacher may be, the kids know. You may not think they know, but they can tell. They may not know themselves, but subconsciously they understand. They're like, there's a disconnect here. And that's probably what woke me up out of this, is the idea that I wasn't doing right by the kids, and that the kids could potentially be losing out on something they needed.
Amen.
And so that brings me back to the whole gist of this message. And despite what maybe I might have put on, this is about sleight of hand. It isn't, I wasn't here to teach you card tricks and hoping everybody would come really quick and learn how to just joke around and do sleight of hand. The message was meant for transparency.
Amen.
Like I mentioned before, sleight of hand puts on a two-hand act. The misdirect, and then the hand that does all the work. And the whole point of it is to put up this sense of transparency, that what you're seeing is exactly what you want to see. It's what your brain's telling you is happening, it's what you understand. And this, if done correctly, sleight of hand looks exactly like how it should. When Teller was up there doing that bit, the first time you watch it, the first time I watched the video, it took me a few times watching it before I could start catching a few of the inconsistencies. But you notice him doing those things, and that your brain is telling you, okay, yeah, he just threw the cigarette on the ground, he pulled another one out, he just lit the cigarette. Like, it's all normal, it's basic. He put on that guise of transparency. You could see through him. And he did it properly. If we take simulation out in our life, if we take the idea that we're putting on this guise and we're hiding what's happening behind us, that transparency suddenly becomes opaque. You can't see through it. And what's actually happening on the backside, nobody really knows. And we're not meant to let that window, let that glass become opaque. As Christians, we're meant to be transparent. For us, for fellow Christians, and for non-Christians. If we're continuing to put on a simulation and putting on this face, do you think that's going to turn non-believers? Do you think someone's going to look at our life and be like, yeah, I can tell they're happy by the way they're faking a smile and showing up because they have to? Do you think fellow Christians are, when they're in need, are going to look to you and be like, oh, I bet they can totally help me, when it looks like they aren't even accepting their own problems? When we make that glass pane become opaque, when we make that window go dark, we're not only not letting people in, but we're pushing others away. Now, the Bible speaks a little bit on transparency, and one in particular that I feel touches on this very well is Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And now when I read that, I don't read that I'm meant to put on a face, that I'm meant to look like a particular way, that I'm meant to walk a particular way, and that I'm meant to be the exact same from when I become saved to when I die. I don't read that and see that that's what God wants me to do. What I read and see is that God wants me to not glorify me, but to show him. Amen. That I'm supposed to be a window, a spotlight that shines my way back to God and Christ. And if I'm darkening that window, how can they see Christ? Amen. That scripture is meant to show us that although we are imperfect, although we go through trouble and we go through hardship, that we're not doing this for us. We're doing it for Christ. We're doing it for the God that sent his only son down to die on the cross for us. We're doing it to show that he is in us and that he is real and that he is moving. And if we continue to hide that and shadow it and close that door, others won't see him and they'll continue to believe he isn't real. So the Bible calls us to be transparent, to be open, to not be closed. We're to show off our flaws so that people know we aren't perfect, so people don't assume that we think we are perfect. We aren't meant to do everything right. We're meant to show that there's someone above us who did everything right, and there's someone above us who loved us even though we don't do things right. Those flaws are what glorify God. Those mistakes are what glorifies God. The fact that God sent his only son to live a sinless life, to be persecuted and killed and tortured on the cross, shows that our flaws point back to him. Because why would he ever love us? Why would a God love me for screwing up constantly? Why would a God love me for not doing everything right? Why would a God love me because I'm imperfect? If I hide those imperfections, that's not doing Christ a good job. That's not showing him that he lived for us. That's not showing him that he loved us. When I hide those imperfections, I'm hiding the side of God that is meant to be shown.
Amen.
Glory to your name, God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God.
He never asked us to be perfect. Continue to make that glass opaque, we shut out God. If we continue to laws and walk our day-to-day life like it's normal, we're not only not walking towards God, but we're keeping others away. We're not letting our life speak to Him. We're not letting our steps, our missteps, our problems show off why God is amazing. We don't always have to use that well-rehearsed skit. We don't have to step the same place we did last week. All we have to be is true and transparent.